How you doing? And welcome to my channel. Today I'm taking a look at the Iconiq Studios Conor McLeod or the Highlander from the 1986 cult classic movie. Quick look at the box there, you can see we have an image of Christopher Lambert as Conor McLeod and a close-up of his face in the background. Very old school looking print on the box. I'm not sure if that's purposely done by Iconiq Studios to make it look like it's from the era, from the 80s, but it looks very third party-ish to me. Bit of a fail, in my opinion. Side of the box, the Highlander text and Studio Canal just out of frame there. And on the back we have some details about the figure and Iconiq Studios. And that's pretty much it for the box. Before I go any further, please don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. So moving on, let's do a pan of the figure itself. Actually, no, what I will do is just add to the overall third party look and feel to the box. We do have this sleeve on the inside or with a very grey sky, very generic with the lightning on it there. And if I take this down here, you can see we have some very third party foam. And this is how the figure comes. He comes with this bag over his head, not even full size to cover the whole figure. And this very cheap third-party foam on the inside. They really skimped on the packaging for this figure, Iconiq Studios did. And yeah, there's no feel of premium quality in the figure or in the box. We'll get further into the figure as we go on, but the box itself isn't great. So here we are for a quick pan of Conor McLeod, of the Clan MacLeod, aka the Highlander, from the 1986 cult classic movie. And believe it or not, Christopher Lambert couldn't speak English when he was cast as Conor McLeod and only started learning the language a few months prior. And Christopher Lambert wasn't the first choice for Conor McLeod. In fact, he was way down the list. Kurt Russell was originally cast as the Highlander. However, he pulled out to do Big Trouble in Little China. And other actors were considered for the role of Conor McLeod. Kevin Costner, Patrick Swayze, Mel Gibson. And on a side note, Christopher Lambert was originally asked to play the role of Martin Riggs before Mel Gibson for Lethal Weapon, but Christopher Lambert turned it down and the opportunity was given to Mel Gibson. And that kind of shot Mel Gibson into superstardom. So things worked out for Mel Gibson on that side of things. And an option for a director's cut of this movie literally went up in smoke. A warehouse fire destroyed reels of unused footage and fight scenes and destroyed any chance of a director's cut. And there was all sorts of extra scenes, as I said, fight scenes, and that would have given the movie more depth and would have went further into the lore of the movie that were literally destroyed in a warehouse fire, which is very unfortunate for fans of the movie. And apparently Christopher Lambert was a danger during sword fights due to the fact that he has terrible eyesight and needs strong glasses to see. So during shooting his sword fights, due to his limited vision or his really poor depth perception is actually what it is, it made his choreography difficult and dangerous for his co-actors. And Sean Connery was paid a whopping $1 million for his role in 1986, and he only spent a week on set. So that's not a bad paycheck for a week's work. Not a very successful movie in the US in 1986. It done very poorly in the box office, but its reception in Europe was huge. A huge fan base in Europe, especially France, given that Christopher Lambert was a well-established actor in France at the time. And its European success is what made the movie the cult classic that it is today. So there we are for a quick pan of the Highlander. So moving on, let's have a look at the accessories that come with the figure. So here we are for all of the accessories that come with the Iconiq Studios Conor McLeod. And just starting off with his hands, we have 12 hands in total. Now I know you can only see 10 there. If I just grab the figure, you can see we do have sword gripping gloved hands on the figure that I'm not willing to take off because I broke a wrist peg already, which we'll get into a bit later on. Like I said, 12 hands. We have 9 ungloved hands and 3 gloved hands. Now, I don't understand why we got this many hands. I suppose they had to give us something, and he is light on accessories, so they gave us an abundance of hands. Closed fists, sword gripping hands, ungloved. Kind of, these hands are they're they're for gripping an item of some sort, like a book or something like that. Just off the top of my head, but we don't have any items for those hands. Relaxed palms, and this very unique hand here, which I thought was for holding the sword, making it look like he's sliding it out of the scabbard, but it doesn't grip in. Now, none of the hands really convincingly grip in anyway, but this one doesn't grip at all. Maybe somebody can hit me up in the comments and explain it to me, but I can't. I can't. Like I said, I thought it was for maybe pushing the sword out of the scabbard to make it look like he's pushing it out, but it doesn't. It doesn't grip the sword. It doesn't even grip the scabbard. So it doesn't grip anything. So it's really a useless hand. It's no use at all. And then we have a relaxed left hand gloved. And while I have the sword in my hand, probably the most iconic accessory you could possibly give Conor MacLeod is a sword that was originally belonged to Ramirez in the movie, and it comes in a nice looking scabbard too, plastic molded. We don't see too much of the scabbard in the movie, if my memory serves me correct. The scabbard wasn't entirely necessary, but it's nice that we got it. Nice little bit of detail to it, and kind of a speckled ivory colour running through it, and a nice mould on the end. A nice little bit of detail, and absolutely looks the part. And then we have the handle of it. Absolutely spot on. It is 100%, in my opinion, spot on for it. Really, really well detailed, and absolutely looks the part. Very impressed with that. Looking at the blade as well, it is a die cast blade, which is nice, and it's not made out of plastic. So, it's always nice to get die cast blades, swords, whatever. It's always nice to get die cast when you can. And then we have these lightning effects. Now, the lightning effects, that only really comes into play at the end of the movie when he finally defeats the Kurgan. But these lightning effects don't match the outfit that he's wearing in that final battle sequence, because in the final battle sequence, he's not wearing the trench coat for starters, and he's not wearing the shirt either. He's wearing the brown leather jacket, and it's like a black sweatshirt underneath. So it's not really entirely matching. I'm not really sure what these lightning bolts or lightning effects are about. They should have given us the black sweatshirt if they wanted us to swap it out for the final battle look. So we would have had the opening sequence look with the shirt on and the end sequence battle. But moving on, the next thing I want to look at is the base. And here we are for the base or the stand. Quite minimalistic in a sense, quite reflective. It's like a sticker. There's no texture to it. The Highlander text, there can be only one, and the lightning bolts, very iconic looking. And let me just take this out for a second. Very iconic looking. I like it. The text on it's very iconic, and it does have a little bit of detail around the edge of it there. It's got a small little bit of detail to it. It's not the worst base I've ever seen. I'm quite happy with it, to be honest. Even though it's quite minimal, I do like it. It's everything it needs to be, and hasn't got a huge footprint. So moving on, let's have a look at the figure itself. And here we are for Conor MacLeod, standing straight up as he comes out of the box. And starting off in my usual fashion, from bottom to top, we have his footwear, completely accurate to the movie. Some finer details missing. I think there's a little bit of print on the heel there, or the side of the sole, that should be there. I think, I'm not 100%, but I think it should say Reebok down the side there of that grey strip there. But apart from all of that, they are really, really accurate to the movie. All dirty and grimy, like they were in the movie. Not in great condition. Very worn, very used looking. A lot of weathering on the front of them, and a decent amount of relief in the lace. But to me, I think they're absolutely fantastic. They're great looking and look accurate enough for me. I'm quite happy with him. And then moving up, we have his jeans on him. If I just pull the coat aside, we have his jeans. Again, accurate to the movie. He's wearing a pair of jeans in the movie. They could have done with maybe being a little bit weathered. I'm not 100%. I'd have to look back. But the material they've used is very cheap material they've used to replicate that denim. It is a cotton, a very fine cotton. It's very reminiscent. It reminds me of the old Hot Toys denim that they would have used back in 2015. I'm thinking of the Marty McFly figure, the denim that they would have used for his jeans and his jacket back in the day. But again, it does the job. It looks the part. The stitching is absolutely fantastic. It looks really nice. It's quite finely stitched. And the stitching up the side of the leg there is really, really nicely done. Really neat. And then on his outer layer, we have his iconic trench coat, I suppose. He wears this throughout the movie. Now, this figure here, to me, is modelled off the very opening scene of the movie. The first 10 or 20 seconds of the battle in the car park before the water starts falling on his head and his hair gets wet. But it is absolutely modelled off that very opening scene. You can see the jacket is tied off on the belt there. It's very tight. It's almost going to be a shame to undo this, but I am gonna undo it. The jacket is a little bit, or the coat, should I say, the coat, it's a little bit over tailored, if that is such a thing. It's in the movie, if you look back at the movie, it's quite loose on him. When he lifts his arm up with the sword, there's a lot of material underneath his arm, and it's much looser on him in the movie. There's a lot more slack in it. It's not a massive issue, but it is a little bit tighter and tailored to him than it should be. How it looked in the movie, and the gloves are a little bit browner than they should be. In the movie, they're more of a kind of a tan brown or a reddish brown off them. They're not that chocolate brown, and that's being a bit nitpicky, to be honest. So let's go for it. Like I said, almost a shame to undo this because it's quite neatly done by Iconiq Studios, and I'm not sure if I'll get it right again or as well as Iconiq Studios got it, but it has to be done. So I'm going to do it. So there we go. So underneath that, we have his leather jacket, and at first impressions, it looks all right. It's, as far as I know, this is real leather. It smells like real leather to me. Anyway, I would take the hands off to take this coat off, but as I mentioned, I've already broken a wrist peg on it. Wasn't happy. It was very difficult to get the hands off, and I did end up having to heat up the rest of the arm to get the rest of the wrist peg out. It was a bit of a pain. But let's see if I can get this off without taking the arm or the hands off, which I'm not sure I can. It's gonna prove difficult, but I really don't want to take, like, those wrist pegs are so cheap and flimsy. So there we have it. Here we have him with just a brown leather jacket on, and that feels like real leather to me. It smells like real leather. I'm gonna go with that being real leather, and I like the look of it. It looks very nice on him. It's really thin. They've had to make it really thin for the trench coat to go over it and not be over bulky. And they've done a decent job with it. Has all the right details in it. It has the elasticated cuffs and the waistband being elasticated, and has the pockets in the right places, and they are functioning pockets. And a functioning zip as well. Yeah. He also has a shirt on underneath. Not entirely accurate shirt. It should be slightly pinkish, not white, but very much so modelled off the opening scene of the movie with the shirt on underneath the brown leather jacket. And the collar of it is a little bit oversized. I think that collar should be smaller. It's kind of distracting on the figure. It makes it look a little bit dollish having this slightly oversized collar on it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. Maybe I can futz it and get it hidden under the trench coat, but it definitely should be down and hidden a little bit more. It's slightly oversized and a little bit of a nuisance. And as I said, the shirt wasn't white in the movie. It was like a light pink. And we only see him with the shirt and the brown jacket on very, very quickly when he gets back from that opening scene, and he takes his trench coat off when he arrives at his apartment. The back of it's very plain. To be honest with you, looking at him right now, I'm getting Fonzie vibes off him. But this isn't really how we see him through the movie. The trench coat is the most iconic look for Conor McCleod. Maybe if he had the black sweatshirt on underneath, we could, mimic the closing scene, the last battle with the Kurgan. And like I said, the only time we really see him with the brown jacket with the shirt is when he gets back to the apartment and takes off the trench coat, and we see him briefly. We should really have been given that black sweatshirt to put on in place of the shirt for an option for, a different part of the movie. So before we get on to the head sculpt, I do want to mention the body. As I mentioned already, I did break a wrist peg already, taking the hand off. So taking hands off for me at the moment are not an option. This is one of the flimsiest bodies for a licensed figure I've ever seen. The top of the legs, the hip flexors are quite tight. The ankle joints are so weak. They are terrible. He just doesn't want to stand up freely. It's a balancing act. And any time I leave him freestanding, I'm afraid he's just going to tip over. They are so weak, so flimsy. And the wrist pegs are some of the cheapest, flimsiest wrist pegs I've ever come across on a 1/6 scale figure. And his elbow joints, you can see there, if you want to lift his arm up, because of the layers on him, this should be ratcheted. The elbow joint should have been ratcheted. It's very difficult to get his arms to stay up. As you can see there, they just come back down because of the amount of layers he has on him. Not ideal, not great. They're going to give way over time. They're going to get really weak over time, even though they are double jointed. And you can get them up, but he's not going to hold a pose. If you put that die cast blade in his hand, it doesn't hold up, and it's going to put strain on those joints, and they are going to become weak over time. It's one of the cheapest licensed bodies I've ever got. The torso flex is very stiff though, there is it's tight enough, the torso flex. The torso and the upper legs are the only joints that are tight, to be honest. But the elbow joints, really weak. The wrist joints, really weak. The knee joints and the ankle joints are really, really, really weak. I can't stress that enough. Really cheap body underneath all of this. So, moving on, let's have a look at this head sculpt and get into the details. So here we are for the Christopher Lambert or the Conor McCleod head sculpt. And I think some aspects of it are really good. They have captured Christopher Lambert, especially in the eyes and how his eyes looked back in the day. The hair isn't too bad either. They could have done with maybe a wash through it. I like the way it comes away from the forehead there, and it's not a separate piece, glued on. There's a lot of these figures with the, overhanging head over the forehead has a separate section glued in, and it's all one piece by the looks of it. Like I said, just with the lack of a wash, but apart from that, the mold is fine. You can see all those different, separate strands. It's not amazing, but it's absolutely acceptable, and I'm quite pleased with the hair. It looks just like it did in the movie in 1986 in that opening sequence just before his hair gets wet. It's not too bushy at the sides. It's just about right. In regard to the sculpt, the face, it does look like Christopher Lambert in 1986 as the Highlander, especially in the eyes, but it's a little bit soft. It's a soft sculpt. Looking back at the movie, he had a lot of stubble in his face. He was never clean shaven in that movie, and he was quite heavy on the stubble, and Iconiq absolutely did not add enough scruff or enough stubble to his face, and he looks way cleaner than he did in the movie. He should be more scruffy looking. The stubble in his face would absolutely be thicker, and he should look a bit more, as I said, scruffy looking, and it takes away from the figure. It takes away from the look of how Conor McLeod looked in the movie. I like the pinkness under the eyes and the tired look, because he did look that way. He was scruffy and tired looking in the movie, and the eyes really tell that story. The lips are quite okay for Christopher Lambert as well. The nose is fine. I just think what lets this sculpt down really is the paint apps. The lack of 5 o'clock shadow or stubble. If they've made it a bit thicker, it would have really captured Christopher Lambert as Conor McLeod. And just while I'm there as well, is I want to point out the collar. As I said, the collar of the jacket is it's just a little bit oversized and a bit too thick. It should be sitting down lower. If I could foots it and get the trench coat to cover it, up a little bit. If I do a bit of footsing, maybe over time I can get it to cover it a little bit. But the collar just, it's not doing it for me. It's a little bit oversized, as I said, and it takes away from the overall realism or look of the figure when things like that are slightly oversized, and it just makes it look more like a doll than it should. But as for the sculpt, I'm not underwhelmed. I know exactly who I'm looking at. I think the outfit helps, like a lot of figures, but I just think the paint apps are lacking on this figure, and if a better sculpt painter had gotten their hands on this sculpt, I think it would have looked absolutely fantastic. No rolling eyeball function, there's no crow's feet, there's no furrowed brow, there's no creases in the forehead. There could have been a bit more detail in it. Now, it's been a while since I've seen the movie. I'd have to look back closer at him, because he was quite young in the movie. Did he have crow's feet? Did he have lines in his forehead? I'm sure he did. I mean, he was young, but he wasn't that young. And I think, like I said, the sculpt is just a little bit soft. And in 6-scale form, those little details added make the sculpt. But I don't have huge complaints. With the exception of the flimsy body, the slightly oversized collar, and the lack of stubble. Now, everything else, bar the lack of stubble, I can forgive. Kind of. I could do a body swap. The collar, I could probably foots with. But the paint apps and the lack of stubble is my real kind of issue and gripe. And I think if he looked a bit scruffier and the 5 o'clock shadow was a bit more there, it would really capture the essence of how he looked in the movie. But it is what it is. It's still a fairly decent figure. And that's pretty much it for the Iconiq Studios Conor McLeod. So if you did make it this far, please don't hesitate to hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps out the channel. And if you are interested in seeing more videos like this, please do hit that like and subscribe. So I'm going to leave it at that. As I said, if you made it this far, thanks very much for watching, and I suppose I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.